whether it's caring about the ingredient or caring about each other as we work together front and back of house, or the environment, or indeed the community. It's something that has run through the Rockpool group, and now is the kind of lifeblood of Margaret as we strive to create great memories for our customers.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are talking to one of the giants of the Australian food industry. Neil Perry was on the verge of opening Margaret, his new restaurant in Double Bay, when Sydney went into lockdown. I wanted to check in with him, find out how he's going, how he is processing this ever-changing landscape. Neil, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dani. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. There were a few restaurants that particularly came to mind when I heard about Sydney closing. One of them was Momofuku Seobo, which had its long planned closure for the day or the night that, lockdown happened.
They were in the opposite situation to me. They lost their closing event. I lost my opening.
Yeah, well, I did see, I think they managed to have a bit of a celebration, albeit a day earlier than they were planning. I'm sure it was very bittersweet, and certainly some people who weren't able to experience it for the last time. Just awful situation. But you, of course, were about to open a restaurant. How did it play out for you?
Well, look, it was difficult. I lost 3 events coming into the proper opening because I was doing 7 events in a row, actually, that were getting the wheels going around in the dining room, and getting us cooking, and great revenue, and fantastic group of customers who are all brands associated with me. Like I did the Qantas and the Palace House events, but we lost Lexus and AFR and CBA private. So look, those were a pain. And then of course Friday we cancelled 1,500 people's bookings for the first week, and then on Saturday we went through and sent everybody, they knew, but we just wanted to make contact of another 1,500 people who are coming the second week. So my heart goes out to all the staff, though. That's the big issue, is they were just started and they had their heads in the right space, and now they've got a couple of weeks where they're not earning any money, and although the government is saying they're going to come to assistance with a JobKeeper style payment, as you know, these things take time, and the kids, it's a saving for them, I guess, but lots of them live week to week, and losing a couple of weeks of salary is tough for them.
Yeah, it is really tough. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Sydney just didn't feel like it was about to have the rug pulled out from under it in this way. It
felt pretty unnerving on Thursday, and I was surprised that we didn't go on Thursday, given how amazingly transmissible this variant seems. And then we got to Friday. I wasn't shocked. I was shocked that we didn't take the whole of Sydney down, because it already felt like it was getting out of hand. But the government made a very quick decision to rein the rest of the city in and do the regional restrictions, and I think that was the most sensible thing to do long term. Hopefully we're only down for 2 weeks. We have great traces and trackers, and we seem to be getting ahead of it. So hopefully the next 3 or 4 days will tell whether it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, well, I really hope that you crush it, certainly for your sake and for everyone in New South Wales' sake, but I think for everyone around the country's sake. We just don't want this variant getting out of control.
No, definitely not. And as you can see how it spreads, and with people at the moment, there's the Virgin pilot, and obviously the miner. He's gone up to WA, and you can see how quickly it gets out of control. But I think the most important thing is that the government seem to have a pretty strong handle on what the reactions need to be. I just think we need to get vaccinated. For Morrison to say it wasn't a race a little while ago is just lunacy. It's a race, all right. We just can't continue to keep locking down on business or people, because confidence, mental health, everything is in the negative rather than the positive. And I don't know if you heard today, Dani, but I was listening to the press conference, and there is a party of that where 31 people were at last week, and amazingly, I think it's 24 of them got the virus out of 31. 6 of those people had the 2 vaccinations, had the double dose, fully vaccinated. They didn't get it. And there was one aged care worker who had their first vaccination. So you've got 7 people out of 31 are the only ones that didn't get it. So if that's not advertising for please go out and get vaccinated so we can get our life out back on track, I don't know what is. Get our life out back on track, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I think that is the huge news out of that press conference. I think it was a little bit overtaken by the bizarre stories about nude sunbathers being chased by deers and somehow running through forests with mobile phones. And like,
I think that was 2 people who wanted to actually get into the news. I can't believe that anything like that they say happened to them, honestly.
It's crazy, but I absolutely agree with you. Like the headline should be the people that were vaccinated didn't get COVID and, of course, then didn't spread it. So, I mean, that is a massive vote of confidence.
And didn't get the variant, right? So this is the most transmissible variant that's running around the world at the moment. And, I mean, if you need any proof that it's transmissible, 26 people got it. So, yeah, look, I think it's always been get vaccinated. It's the way that we get out of here. And if we don't get to the situation where we're vaccinated and we open up our country and we accept the fact that there will be this disease in the community from time to time, and like the flu, people will get sick, and sadly sometimes there might even be, if there's underlying health issues, which is where, the flu causes issues, there may even be deaths, but we can't actually have a situation where we're closed off to the world for the next 10 years. We'll open in 10 years' time and the same thing will happen. So we really need to actually get vaccinated and get moving in the world again.
Yeah, we definitely do. If anyone can get vaccinated, please do get vaccinated.
I've had my first one.
Yep, I've had my first one as well. And
I'm excited.
I felt so incredibly grateful and quite teary. And yeah, I just wish everyone could be vaccinated straight away. But as we know, there's a few issues. Neil, you've opened restaurants for decades and in some pretty interesting circumstances. Tell me how you put the opening and the actual not quite opening of Margaret in context with some of the other scenarios where you've opened restaurants.
Yeah, quite different. I mean, I've opened, as you say, in really crazy circumstances. So 1989 was Rockpool, and in 1989 we had the recession that we had to have. Trish and I borrowed $1.8 million, and we were paying the bank 18% interest, which is just frightening when you think about interest terms as they are today. You can't even imagine how you considered doing business, but they were rampant, and of course they were affecting the business world around us. So it was a pretty tough environment to open a restaurant, but we were still open and we were trading and the wheels were going. Then, of course, we had a Rockpool Bar and Grill and Spice Temple, which combined was an $11 million project right smack bang in the middle of the GFC. So, the wheels fell off the whole thing in November. David bought the building the year and a bit before. And we were full on into building both of them. And of course, you just can't stop. We had to finish it. And so that was pretty scary. That was almost as nervous as I've ever been in my life, I think. And a great mate of mine, Jeff Dixon, said to me after I took him through the site at about 7:30 one night, we were about 3/4 built. We walked out on the street at Hunter Street where there wasn't one single person. And he said, mate, I feel for you. This isn't Crown, where we get 16 million visitors a year. And it sort of dawned on me that I'd sort of really punted on the Sydney CBD in a massive way. But of course it panned out to be the most extraordinary experience ever. And here I spent a lot more money in the restaurant than I wanted to because I called it Margaret, and because I really think of this place as kind of the restaurant where I'm most likely the last restaurant I'll own. I own it myself. It's named after my mother, and it's very personal to me, and I want to be there nearly every day. And so when the budget was going up, when things were going, do you want it to look like this? Then I would go, yes, okay, I'll find the money. Yes, I want those beautiful steak knives. I'll find the money. That was sort of continually kept happening. And even though I'd spent a lot more than I thought, just coming in and having those great relationships with business and having those cash flow events beforehand, and it seemed like everything was aligning. And I felt like I was kind of diving in the pool of the 100 meters race, but I was on a 3 meter springboard. I had such a great head start on where things were going. And of course, now they've got me down in the pool kicking off the wall while everyone else is jumping off the top. So, I'll make it to the end, but it's certainly going to be, in terms of a cash flow turnaround, it's probably a $500,000 event for me in the negative. So I'll get there. But, from thinking I was in great shape, this has knocked me around. But hey, Dani, you know what? For what's been happening in the last 18 months and what's happened around the world and what's happened to our great hospitality family in Europe and America, and those kids were locked down for a year. So these are really small things to bear compared to what other people have been through.
Well, yeah, I mean, perspective is a powerful tool, but you must have had your moments.
Yeah, my life. I'm just putting my life in hold, and I just sort of said, "Hey, let's write 3 months worth of good weekend columns and get myself through to Christmas. So when I open the restaurant, I'm not getting hassled, and then I've got to do my licensee course because I'm the licensee, and I've got my RSA, and I've got the license, and I sort of said, "Oh, you know what? That was going to be like I'll never get that 7 hours back doing that course online, but I might as well just stick my head down on Thursday and do it and knock it over." There's all these things. And of course, we're working really hard to make sure that anything that was not quite right is fixed before the restaurant open. And I sent a message out to the staff to say, we'd be fighting for every dollar the government would send their way, and also talking to them about all the things we want to do when we get an opportunity to start training again and get the restaurant open.
Well, that's good. Well, one good thing about the COVID disaster payment that the federal government will start to pay out from week 2 of the lockdown is that it is available to visa holders. And I know that you are very active in, advocating on behalf of temporary visa holders last year. So, I mean, I think at least there is that recognition that those people are part of the community and need to be looked after just like anybody else.
Yeah, well, a great part of the, the family, the hospitality family. And I think sadly, if you look at, 400,000 plus work holiday people that aren't here and students, and about another 100 or more thousand of skilled visas holders had to go home. And I know you guys down there in Victoria were really knocked about by that because they just couldn't hold out that second 4.5 month lockdown. But and lots of people moving out of the industry because they, you don't get locked out of construction, or you don't get locked out of a few other essential services. So I know a lot of people went, gee, I don't need to work weekends and nights, and my job isn't, shut down. So I know that it's not only fantastic for visa workers, but it's important for the industry for it to feel like it's, somewhat respected by the government and protected by the government when we get into situations like this. So I'm really pleased for the guys that there's a safety net there for them.
Yeah. It's interesting, you mentioned people that have left the industry through this period. And of course, there's the international, so many of those people have left. And staffing is a constant struggle, not that it wasn't before. But by the same token, a lot of people have used this as an opportunity to reset and to sort of reframe their businesses, whether that's smaller menus or shorter opening hours, trying to work with one team instead of 2, whatever it is, just to cope with the new circumstances, but also to, in a positive sense, to use it as an opportunity to reset, get a bit of work-life balance, have people working, having a proper weekend, all those kinds of things. Given that this is the first restaurant that you've opened by yourself, I mean, have you also used it as an opportunity to open a different kind of restaurant?
Well, I mean, we're not opening Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday lunch because we just don't have enough staff. So there's the reset there. And we certainly number crunch and have a look at whether it was worth opening that when we can get the extra staff. Look, I think we've come into it sort of being very strong on people's sort of working hours and making sure that, you know, we've asked the guys in the kitchen to work, you know, 44 to 45 hours, but every single dime of overtime's paid, and we want no more than that from them, and we want them to have work-life balance, and sometimes over the weekends, and no double shifts on Saturday and Sunday, and things like that, to make sure that people are feeling like they're valued, but also, most importantly, like you said, that they feel like they can have a fantastic job, they can deal with the best produce in the country, but they've also got a life when they head home. But, you know, in sort of framework of, say, smaller menus and so thing like that, I haven't done that because I always struggle to have small menus because I always have so many great suppliers that I want to represent, but I also love to give people choice. And so, you know, the menu's up on the website now. I think there's probably about 35, 40 things on it, plus dessert, and we're doing a bar menu as well. But it's just so hard when you've got some of the greatest fishermen in the world working with you, not to have their beautiful fish, you know, perfectly cooked and sent to the table. But I think that gives people a great deal of choice. So often smaller menus and some of these things that we do are great for the restaurateur potentially, but aren't so great for the customer. So I like to focus on what's good for the customer as well when I make these choices. So I often think that they like to go to a restaurant and have some choice, and that can be in price point. So on the restaurant menu, you know, I think it's got some really keen, very affordable pricing, and it's got some very much luxury pricing, because you might want to go there and eat caviar, truffles at this time of year and coral trout, or you might want to have something much simpler, a roast chicken off the rotisserie, or a braised piece of meat, or something that's some beautiful vegetables just grilled over the wood fire. So it just gives people the option to be able to go for a snack, go for dinner, or go for a big night out. And I think that's one of the things that, you know, places like Bar and Grill have always been successful at. And I hope Margaret is in its, I guess it's neighborhood kind of restaurant, brasserie, bistro type of feel, that people feel like they can just drop in and have a bite, drop in and have a Negroni, or indeed bring, you know, the family in on a Saturday night for a birthday. So that's the sort of restaurant we want it to be. And, you know, I want to kind of be there every day, you know, looking after my customers.
Let me ask you about the green salad with Margaret vinaigrette, because I would love to know more about Margaret and how you're honouring her with this restaurant.
Well, I felt that we had to create something. And one of the things that's really important about salad is, right through summer we'd always grow our own when as a family, because my dad was a really keen gardener, and I think most of the things that we're mucking around with at the moment, with one of my mum's most favourite dishes, and my favourite dish that I used to love to eat, which was her steak and kidney pie. So when we get back open and we're back in the kitchen trialling, we'll revisit Mum's steak and kidney pie. But I wanted the salad to be representative of the palm sugar vinaigrette, which I made quite famous, and through Rockpool Bar and Grill, and was really created at Blue Water Grill. So I wanted to sort of create a signature at Margaret that was really representative of this restaurant being different to the other restaurants that I've been at. And so the Margaret dressing is really Rich and I coming up with this idea of, I love matcha, which is, in its simplest form, a Mexican paste, which is really dried chili that's ground and fried in olive oil. And then in its more complicated state, it has sometimes sesame seeds and sometimes other spices and sometimes pepita seeds. And so we sort of created a spice mix, house-made matcha, if you like. And then we built a dressing around that with really high quality, vinegar and honey beautiful. The Margaret extra virgin olive oil that Cobrima are doing with me. It's the Hoji Blanco, which I really, really love. And, seasoning. And we've built this into the beautiful, it's not outrageously, it's not spicy, but it is a little tiny bit hot, but you don't even notice it on the bitter leaves and the firm green leaves and things. But the dressing itself just has such wonderful depth of flavor from all those things, and obviously the spices and the sesame. And so what it really does, I guess, is it's incredibly representative of what we want Margaret to be, which is beautiful ingredients, great simplicity, yet there's a sort of sophistication and also craft that we bring in the way that we cook. And Rich and I are doing a collaboration, and Richard Purdue is one of the finest cooks, along with Corey Casella at Rockpool and Andy Evans and original chef Khan at Rockpool. I mean, we all have cooked together for so long, but we all have this wonderful, I think, ability to understand that the produce is the most important thing. And for us, we have to let it breathe, and we have to make sure that we bring great craft. But it's more about what we can take out of the dish rather than what we can add in. And I think Rich and I are on very much the same page. So it's a real collaboration. And probably he's really comfortable in Mediterranean. I mean, I am too. But I bring some of the Asian flavors that I've always worked with that kind of present themselves in a kind of very Western way. That's not like walking into a restaurant that's half Thai and half, Mediterranean. But there are flavors, and there is things like, fish sauces and soys and mirin and tagaroshi and curry paste and all these sorts of things that bring great flavor to a dish and umami, but you wouldn't necessarily say, oh, that's what's in it. It just completes the dish and rounds it out and brings great flavor. So the dressing was really to become a signature of Margaret. The sense and feel of Margaret really comes from my mum's sense of generosity and hospitality. So Dani, to give you a kind of a view of where my life started, and I suppose my life in restaurants is influenced. My dad, very well documented, really, created the cook that I am in seasonality and respect for produce and understanding fish and meat and, growing things and the natural taste of things. And then Mum was an amazing woman who was very generous and caring, and we had a massively extended family, really. I was one of 7, and the only kid was related to all of Dad's four children and Mum's 2 children. I was the little sort of brat in the middle of the Brady Bunch, really, I suppose. It was related to everyone. But my business partner Trish, who is still in Qantas and the Rockpool group with me, started Rockpool with me in 1989. She, it's pretty well documented that she's my cousin, but we lived together for a few years at home when I was young, and then we lived together when we left home and flattered together. And so we've got this great relationship that goes beyond being blood relatives. But that was sort of Mum's thing. She, my nieces lived with me for a few years. Anytime there was trouble in the family or an issue, she would be there to support the family and so forth. And so that really sort of started the care philosophy that I've run all the restaurants with. And so it was important, I think, for me to recognize, although I haven't talked a lot about it, I have in the restaurants when I've spoken to my staff, but I haven't really spoken a lot about it publicly. So it was important for me to kind of, I think, really shout out about how important she's been in my restaurant life. And I sort of dedicated the most recent book that I've just finished and is out in October to her as well, because I think that sense of generosity runs through the book as well, and caring is an important part of whether it's caring about the ingredient or caring about each other as we work together front and back of house, or the environment, or indeed the community. It's something that has run through the Rockpool group, and now is the kind of lifeblood of Margaret as we strive to create great memories for our customers.
Great. Well, it sounds, incredibly resonant. And looking at the menu, I feel like the dishes just shout flavour. Just looking at a few like rotisserie chicken with shiitake butter or smoked buffalo mozzarella with grilled radicchio. I'm sort of sensing a lot of smoke, fire and grill in amongst it all. Beetroot baked in embers. That sounds beautiful too. So Neil, it's almost, it's almost exactly a year ago that you quote unquote retired. And I remember the day after you announced your retirement, you then posted a video of yourself on Instagram, like incredibly busy back of house, like getting some food out. And I thought, this man hasn't quite read the dictionary definition of retirement. I'm not sure he knows what it means. What happened there?
Well, look, I intended to take a bit of a break, and I'm still a shareholder in Rockpool, and all of my brilliant people are there in Sydney and Melbourne and Perth, and I love them dearly, and I talk to them all the time, actually. But I just decided to step back from the running of the business, and the guys were happy for me to do that, which was brilliant. And I sort of was focusing very heavily on helping Corey and the guys restart Rockpool and Andy Spice Temple after COVID kind of shutting them down, and then working really hard on keeping the whole notion of Hope Delivery going. So we ended up to the end of last year serving 300,000 meals between Sydney and Melbourne, and I had intended to take a big break, but look, just by chance I saw the site in Double Bay. I met the developers, Charles Malek and Dan Gallen and Patrick Keenan, and three really great guys who, again, they'd had a great way of doing business, and integrity and sort of that whole notion of looking after each other is important to me. And I felt like I'd met some guys who weren't just developing something, but were developing something they wanted for it to be world class and amazing. And I just felt like I'd just found the best site in the eastern suburbs, and I was also pondering the fact of kind of being retired and recognised that I really missed all the amazing young people that I work with. So, it started a play. I talked to the guys at Dining Group, and they were happy for me to do Margaret. So I just decided to do it, and it started out. It still is going to be in one way a very humble kind of bistro and a neighbourhood restaurant, but in another way, hopefully it brings craft and experience to the eastern suburbs, which sets a great tone for Double Bay and helps bring all the other guys along with me.
Well, I mean, we've talked about staffing and how tricky that is at the moment, but in your role as a mentor to so many in the industry, how do you, and taking a macro view, sort of beyond COVID, how do you see the state of things in terms of, where the industry is placed in society? Do people value it enough? And what is it going to take for more people to enter and stay in hospitality?
Well, I think, we've got to focus very strongly on young Australians. And look, immigration will start again, and we will be able to bring some of our amazing skilled visa people who are sitting in, Korea and Brazil and Italy and dying to come back to Australia, because there were many of them on the way to, PR, but just missed that boat, sadly, and they were really contributing majorly to the community. But I see young Australians being keen to get in the industry, and hopefully, with government help, subsidies pushing them. I think with the big upheaval that the industry went through in terms of pay versus hours, and like every industry's changing, and that helps people sort of move towards the industry and see that it's got a great place to work and train, and there's great rewards there. So hopefully that's a very positive thing. And I think the industry is valued by society, and so hopefully people will help support their local businesses and particularly help them through these tough times. I mean, it's been great to see, whether people have been supporting, takeaway, or they've been, really supporting the industry once they were out of lockdown by coming back and booking and getting into the restaurants and in a sense kind of being a little bit more flexible about their attitudes. I mean, things like, the 2-hour turn and stuff that was often pushed back against was sort of accepted as, hey, we have to kickstart this industry. So we kind of understand if they're going to pay people the right wages and if people are going to value the industry, and if the industry is going to survive, then if prices can't go up dramatically, then the restaurateur's definitely going to have to get an extra half a turn, or definitely going to have to have another double turn on a busy night to be able to drive that turnover, to be able to make all of the percentages that business faces in the modern era, to work. So I think definitely our amazing customers they've come back with a lot of positivity towards the industry. I mean, I said it when we opened up in Sydney in June. For the first couple of months, it was like customers were on ecstasy. Honestly, everybody loved everybody else, and oh my God, we're so happy to be back. And there is an amazing respect, I think, for what we've been through and gone through in the industry, and we've had to be very respectful of our COVID safe plans, and in New South Wales we've been very strong on our QR coding, and that Services New South Wales app has just been extraordinary for the last 8 months, and we've all worked very hard and tirelessly on making sure that in the environment that we're in, we're providing a very safe environment for our customers, and I think our customers have been very thankful for that.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sure when you come out of this lockdown, it'll be the same. There'll be that just fizzing enthusiasm to be back in restaurants, and I'm sure that at Margaret they will be all about the truffles and the caviar as well.
I hope so. Yeah. And the beautiful rotisserie chicken and the simple salads and things that we're doing. And I think nothing really, I think, frames what Margaret's about more than the Sydney rock oyster. Because we put in a special 14-degree fridge to hold the oysters in perfect condition. It's one of the reasons why the bar and grills, I think, always have some of the best oysters in the country. They get the best oysters, but they're always kept in the fish shop and the butcher shop, and that runs at about 16 degrees. It rocks hate going into a fridge because that's not the type of animal they are. They're in estuaries, and they are out of the tide and under the tide and so forth. And so they're used to sometimes having the sun on their back and being in warm conditions. So, 4 degrees really knocks them around and kills them. So I think, having that fridge and making sure that those oysters are in perfect condition and opening them at the moment that they're ordered, as many restaurants do, but if they're not in perfect condition when you serve them. And lots of our guys always say, our suppliers, that the oysters kept in that condition really are in the best nick about 4 or 5 days to 10 days out of the water. The flavour is really fantastic. And so that's one of the things that we focus on really strongly, is just looking after, what our beautiful produce.
Well, Neil, I have a similar system to that when we go camping, and we get oysters and we wrap them in a sack and dampen it with seawater and then just put it under the trailer in the shade. And
perfect.
They are delicious as well. I reckon I never thought of it, but they're probably at about 16 degrees.
Yeah, they really hate being cold rocks. And so, you're basically killing them, and then they drop their water. So that whole thing that you've got going there is why when you open them, you just go, wow, these oysters are amazing. They start to drink up a little bit of their own water because they're in there, and it actually creates more flavour within the oyster. So all those things are important, and there aren't very many people who do that. I mean, we always have at Rockpool Bar and Grill, and I know Josh does it at the fish butchery. So it's important that we do things like work with the best fishermen, dry fillet our fish. And then you were talking about, I've been cooking over wood fire for the last 16 years professionally, and all my life as a person cooking on barbecues. So it was important that the heart of Margaret was the wood fire grill, and because it is the heart, then we try to do as many things on it and around it as we possibly can.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the magic of restaurants, sometimes it just does feel like magic. But then speaking to you about all those little details, you do get a sense that, you know, there is actually a very thoughtful magician who's creating, you know, who's doing those tricks and making it. And of course, you know, the idea is that it just seems effortless and people would just think, well, I know the oysters there always taste better. I don't need to know why, but I'm going back.
Well, it's interesting, you know, we were doing the tasting and we had some of Bruce Collis's beautiful King George whiting, and I was going to do that with some charred leeks and a little preparation of the dressing. And we you know, cooked it on the skin, and then we take it and put basically at that stage it goes quite gelatinous. I mean, that whiting is just phenomenal as long as you don't overcook it. And we essentially put it on a plate. The underside never touches fire or whatever, and it looks a little bit raw when it's there. But by the time the residual heat goes through, it's perfectly cooked. And I said to Richard, I said, I honestly think this is so amazing, this fish. All we need to do is kind of, you know, and I say drown, but a lot, just not a drizzle, a really good soaking of the Haji Blanco, lemon juice and sea salt, and serve it. And we tasted it and we just went, yeah, that's our signature. We are brave enough because we know this fish is amazing. We know that our fisherman's incredible. We know that we've treated it perfectly. We know we've cooked it perfectly. And all it needs is the best oil in Australia, beautiful Murray salt, and a squeeze of lemon juice. And we know some of our other more robust fish can handle that bit of extra, you know, exo butter or chimichurri, what is essentially salmonella, or, you know, that's the sort of view that we have. But I sort of said to Rich when we decided to serve it like that, I said that's the bravery of this restaurant, is people will understand how extraordinary the produce is.
That's certainly, it does take a lot of confidence and experience to do things so simply.
It does, but it's worth it. And I've always said simplicity is the hardest thing in the world because there's nowhere to hide. And so you've got to get it right to the moment. Otherwise, you're in serious trouble.
Well, Neil, it's always a pleasure to speak, and I really now have an extra reason to hope that Sydney smashes this COVID crisis, because I think people really need to eat all that food. So, yeah, good luck. It's great to have a chat, and I hope it is not too long before you're able to throw open the doors at Margaret and welcome your excited customers.
Well, thank you, Dani, and I hope at some stage you're one of the ones that comes in the door, because I'd love to see you.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. Okay, take care.
Fantastic. Ciao. Bye.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtyLinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This